Hi guys, so I wanted to talk about the difficulty of avoiding violence as a man. Sorry if this video is a bit shaky. I'm going to try and make it more stable than the last one. I have a device, a gimbal I've been meaning to use, but I forgot to bring it. You hear a lot of these stories of guys who kill someone with one punch. It happened to someone in the town I went to school in, actually. And the guy who did it, by all accounts, was a nice fella and was very regretful. I wasn't close to the story, I don't really remember the details of it. But there are many of these stories. It happens quite a lot. And, you know, there are some sort of some situations where this might not apply, but generally speaking, I'd say, you know, morally, the difference between punching someone and the difference between punching someone and killing them is, well, there isn't one really most of the time. It can be a matter of just how well the punch lands, how hard you punch, how, you know, bad they are at sort of taking a punch. And that can be the difference between life and death. And, you know, like, probably most men have punched someone at some point, and it doesn't usually result in death. Obviously, there are situations where, you know, if you're obviously like way bigger than someone and they're hammered or something, and you know full well that it's going to be particularly dangerous to punch them, then it's, you know, it's different. You know, there are circumstances in which it could be morally different to just your average punch in a pub fight or whatever, but most of the time that's not really the case. It's just two guys get into a fight, one punches the other, maybe they fall awkwardly, hit their head, and sometimes dying is the lesser of two evils in that situation. You know, I mean, head injuries can be so ugly. And of course alcohol is a big factor. I'm not a big fan of alcohol in general, really. I think it's kind of a scourge on our society. Depends where you go, really. You know, here it's not so bad. People do drink, but it's not the same. England is horrible. And there's so much violence. You know, people, most of the time, people when they're sober don't get into fights. You know, maybe there's like road rage incidents and stuff, and in some areas people do, but generally speaking, two sober adult men who have jobs and families and lives, they're not going to get into a fight when they're sober. It doesn't really happen. It's so unlikely and would be so ridiculous, and there'd have to be so much sort of personal animosity built up between the two of them. It just it doesn't really happen, you know. But when people get drunk, it's just impossible to reason. But you know, that aside, women get drunk too, and whilst they do get into fights, it's not as frequent, generally speaking. And I think part of it is that it's very difficult to walk away from being challenged or confronted in that way. It makes you feel very bad about yourself. There's something kind of innate in us, I think, even though in most of us that's been sort of suppressed through years of civilization and kind of polite society, and, you know, our hormones being absolutely nuked, and societal norms and stuff. You know, but it's still there. I'm not someone who fights. Like, I don't, you know, like, I have nothing to prove in that regard. Like, there's so many people that could beat me up, and like there's no sense in me caring about that, you know. It's like a stupid thing to think about. And even I, at numerous times in my life, as someone who, most of my self-esteem is wrapped up in other things, but I've found it very, very, very hard to walk away. Luna, what are you doing over there? Come over here. Luna, get over here. She's found it very easy to walk away. I've found it very hard at times to, maybe she's actually headed towards that dog that's barking at her. Maybe she wants a fight. I found it very hard at times to walk away, and found it just difficult emotionally. Like, I think about it sometimes, because I think you can be a reasonable person with your head screwed on tight, and you get into a stupid situation with someone you'll never see again in your life. And sometimes it's like this. It's like there's such a thin line between the right thing happening, which is you walk away and just forget about that person, or entering into a terrible, terrible situation that can destroy your life, destroy theirs, destroy both of your lives, really, if one of you, accidentally kills the other, which I accept is not the norm. Most of the time when people fight, that doesn't happen, but these days it's getting increasingly weird because everyone's a fucking MMA artist, and they're all I don't know, there seems to be a greater disparity now. I think back in the day it was like, two men sort of squaring up to each other and punching each other. Now there's guys who are sort of unfathomably weak. Like, you see some guys around, you think that you wouldn't have existed in the 1950s. You wouldn't have been allowed to exist, being so thin and weak. And then you see other guys who juiced up on steroids, who are 6'7" and do martial arts, who could literally kick your head off without looking. And there's an enormous disparity in that sense. So probably the incidence of violence is less than it was in the past. Probably less people fight. When I grew up, it wasn't normal. Like, my brothers grew up in the same area as me, and my two oldest brothers, when they grew up, it was kind of normal. Like, especially my oldest brother, it's got less and less common with every generation, but it was normal. People would have fights, and they weren't most of them weren't serious fights, and it wasn't a particularly rough area. But there was a time when it didn't really matter where you lived, you would just fight. And that wasn't the case for me, for my generation, where I lived. It was abnormal. And here in Spain, it's not really normal to fight. I was speaking to a Russian guy, who moved here when he was a teenager, and he said that when he was at school in Russia, everyone would fight. It wasn't a possibility that you didn't fight. Everyone would fight. And he said that when he came here as a 14-year-old, and he's quite he's a soft-spoken, very nice, very, very, very nice guy. He's not a tough guy or anything. But he said that when he came here to Spain, when he was 14 or so, it was considered, he was considered sort of crazy, and it was really weird that he used to try and fight people. And he found out pretty early on, if you fight, you'll just get kicked out of school, and you can't, you're not allowed to. People here don't fight, really. I've never seen anything even vaguely resembling violence since I've been here. I used to see it in England at night, going past pubs and stuff. I would see fights, or I would see things that looked like they could have turned into fights, or a fight that was about to happen. But yeah, here, nothing really. You'd see homeless people fighting each other a lot in England as well. Looking like they were about to fight each other, or about to fight you, or whatever. Thankfully, there's way less of that here. Yeah. I wonder to myself a lot, why it's so difficult. And I guess it's, I've already sort of answered it, I guess, at least to an extent that's sort of satisfactory to me, is it's kind of just innate, and it's probably a good thing at one point in time to have that in you. But there are situations I still think about, from years ago. I think about times when my better judgment led me to go, no, I'm not gonna get into this situation, I'm not gonna fight this person over essentially nothing. I've got a family, I've got a future, and it's just crazy, and one of us could die and like, or just get in trouble, and it's just crazy. There's no reason to do it. But it still bothers me. It still bothers me that I didn't. There's times people have challenged me, you know, and I like, I still think about it to this day, and I like fantasize about beating them up, you know, and it bothers me. Yeah, I don't know, like when I was a kid, I was really afraid of violence and physical confrontation, and in my head it was a much bigger thing than it was. And it's funny because at that age it's fine, I think, really. Like there are times I look back at school when people bullied me and stuff when I was like 12 or so, when I was going through a bad time, and I think, man, I should have fucking battered that guy, like, because we were all like 12. If you just had the mindset, you know, no one was hard. There were some people who were much bigger, but generally speaking, at 12, no one's gone through puberty, no one's hard. If I had the mind, if I had realised, it's like I realise sometimes when I look back as well, I think at school, if I'd realised that teachers can't do anything, and I just gone, fuck off, like, I'm not doing anything you tell me, piss off, like, not that that's nice to behave that way, but I didn't realise how much power I had at the time. And similarly, I look back to times when, yeah, people treated me like shit and stuff when I was that age, and I think, man, I could have just gone berserk at that guy, like, I could have just gone fully fucking berserk, and like, he wouldn't have been able, he just wouldn't have been ready for it. But I guess I'm injecting my mindset now into that of a 12-year-old, and it's unrealistic for me to have had that mindset. But I was, yeah, anyway, as I got older, I was really terrified of physical violence. I was always really afraid of being beaten up. I had a very outsized fear of it. And now I don't have that in the immediacy of it. I'm very afraid of the consequences of it. I'm very afraid of getting brain damage. I'm very afraid of being disfigured. I'm very afraid of dying, obviously. I'm afraid of getting in trouble. I'm afraid of hurting someone else and getting in trouble. I'm afraid of if I'm with the dog and something happens and I can't look after the, you know, something happens to her, or she runs out into the road because I get into a thing. And I've had to stop myself a couple of times when I've been with her. The last time that happened, actually, the guy had a staffy, and it really pissed me off because I was like, mate, I'm not scared of you, I'm scared of your fucking dog attacking my dog. That was what the whole thing was about. It was about the dogs anyway, but probably a good thing that the staffy was there. And I'm afraid of, you know, things like my property being damaged and stuff. Like, I'm not afraid of being hurt anymore. That isn't scary. Like, physical pain is nothing, but the consequences of a split-second decision are insanely terrifying. And it's not really terrifying that other people are capable of that. It's terrifying to know that you yourself are capable of that, and that in a slightly different situation, with slightly more provocation, with slightly less stopping you, with slightly fewer confounding factors, you could make a terrible decision that, even a lot of the time, best case scenario, you know, you'd get arrested for it depending on where you live, or you'd make an enemy in the local area, or you'd, you know, and it's crazy to think about sometimes. Wait, I want to adjust myself because I'm not really comfortable here. Where are you going? Where are you off to on your own? She wants to bloody go home. She wants dinner. She's not enjoying it today. Just fucking look at all this horrible graffiti here, man. Like, out in the mountains, right? What the fuck is this purple shit? Like, this is the kind of thing that would make me do something stupid. They spray paint a purple I get they're probably kids. Look, they've written Allah and they've got an arrow pointing towards a purple dick. Like, that's great, isn't it? There's like all these like swastikas and sometimes stars of David and stuff on the mountain. It's like, man, do it on a if you don't do it anywhere, but like do it somewhere else, not in the fucking mountains. If you're going to do it, man, it's horrible. But yeah, I doubt it's an adult doing it. It would be crazy if you saw an adult spray painting purple penises onto rocks in the mountains. Then you might have good cause to avoid a physical confrontation with them, because they're probably absolutely fucking psychotic. The other day, for example, we were out, we walked past this restaurant, and I have a thing, like, I think most men have this. You don't want to move out of the way of another man, and you don't want to look down if they look at you, but also it's weird to just like stare at people. Hang on, let me, my thingy's come on, one sec. Sorry, my eye comfort shield, my warm light filter come on. I didn't want it to like affect the video in some way. I don't like them calling it an eye comfort shield. It makes me feel a bit, you know, let's call it a blue light filter. It makes me feel a bit more, I don't know, sounds a bit more scientific. Makes me sound a bit less of a bitch. So anyway, yeah, you don't, I don't know, I think this is a common thing. Oh, I better take you away from this cactus, eh? I think it's you know, you don't want to look down, you don't want to like, and there's certain people you just like, oh, we're just two grown men and I don't even think about this, but when it's like men your age of a certain disposition, you feel there's something to, whoa, rabbit, oh, okay, you stay away from that rabbit, Luna. Oh wait, Luna, you stay away. She's been well trained now. She's been absolutely bollocked for chasing rabbits in the past. Sorry, this video is becoming a bit scattered and all over the place. But yeah, you know, there's certain people of a certain disposition you feel sort of just challenged by their presence, and you feel like, I feel like, oh well, if he's going to stare at me, I'm going to stare at him, and I don't want to look down first because that will make me feel small. That'll make me feel bad about myself. That'll make me look weak, which is insane. It's absolutely insane. And similarly, you know, you don't want to move out the way and stuff. So anyway, we're walking past this restaurant, and you know, normally when people like that sort of glare at me, I'll like glare back. And then we walked past, and this guy was there, and he was obviously like pretty drunk, and he was sort of staring at me like very intensely for no reason. And it pissed me off, so I was staring back. As we walked towards each other, I'm walking along and I'm just like staring at him, like, you know, just with a blank expression, just like, why are you staring at me, what are you looking at? And then the closer I got, like, he just appeared quite sort of psychotic, and I sort of impulsively, as I got right up next to his face, I just kind of looked away. And I was with my girlfriend. I felt like shit after. I felt like bad about myself. I was like, oh man, it's like really annoys me that he would do that, and it really annoys me that because I care about the consequences, I have to let him away with it, because like there's a part of me just wants to like just sort of act like a chimpanzee about it, you know. And it really annoyed me, and I was like fantasizing about, like, man, imagine if I just went back there and just tapped him on the shoulder and just, you know, whatever, like, and did something. And I just kept thinking about it, and then after about 20 minutes I was kind of like, that's, you know, all right, who gives a shit? I'll never see this guy again in my life. He's a knob for behaving like that. He's obviously just a loser, and thank God I didn't get into a fight with a literal stranger over eye contact, you know, like the most ridiculous thing ever. And I thought, it's crazy that just 20 minutes of like calming down has provided such a difference in sort of sobriety of mind. Like it took me from an emotional state to being like, I have a girlfriend who I love, and a dog who I need to look after, and plans for the future, and things I want to achieve, and parents who love me, and stuff to do, and I should never get into a fight unless it's for self-defense, ever. Like, there's just no reason to, unless it's to defend myself or my family. Full stop, basically. Like, there isn't another I'm not in a village of 200 people where I need to defend like my honor or something. You know, like no one knows anyone. It's ridiculous, and that impulse has outstayed its welcome. Like I'm not even bemoaning the fact that it's there, because, as I said, I understand that it had a purpose at one point in time and can still have a purpose for many people, because the reality of some people's lives is like, you do need to stand up for yourself in that way in some communities and some places and some environments, but not when you're 30 and you have like a nice life and, you know, you're planning on having kids and having a family. So it's just insane. And I sometimes think women are not very switched on about this, and not women I think are inevitably mixed up in this weird cocktail of feelings and self-worth and feeling challenged by other men and stuff. I think in situations where these fights do happen a lot, like on nights out and stuff, it's typically around women, and I think to say it's like to impress women is an oversimplification, but it clearly serves some kind of purpose in terms of like your status and how you perceive yourself and how others in your mind perceive you. And the reality is, like, a lot of women do like it. And I don't know, my girlfriend is pretty cool in that regard. Like, she's not that type of person. But I even remember her a couple of times over the years, like when I got into very near confrontations with people, she kind of liked it. And I think sometimes that again is just an innate thing, like they just kind of like that. And again, that served a purpose at one point in time. You know, you wanted to have a partner who would, like, you know, defend you. So that's, from an evolutionary perspective, that makes sense. But in sort of modern society, sorry, I'm a dog, I'm just making sure it goes away. I don't know why they're coming over here. Yeah, good. Luna's pretty fucking Larry as well. From an evolutionary perspective, it makes sense, you know. Yeah, but so yeah, my girlfriend's pretty cool about stuff like that. But sometimes I think, like, as with many things of this nature, as a man, I want to say to her, like, I'm a bit insecure about this, and like, I wish she would say more. Sometimes, you know, I was talking to her about that situation when it happened the other day, and she was just like, yeah, well, whatever, didn't really say anything. And part of me is like, I wanted her to say more, you know. I wanted her to sort of I think in general women in these situations could probably do quite a lot, and I think women should turn their noses up at it more, at like sort of senseless violence. I think it's good to be able to defend yourself, defend your family, but it's much more respectable to be one of those people who can and who only does it if they need to, you know. And I think both genders kind of have a role to play in that, and I think women are possibly not aware of the power or responsibility, or both, that they have in these situations. But again, it's one of those things you don't really like to say, you know, to your partner, like, oh, can you be more sensitive about my insecurities, when you know, because you don't. I'm very honest with her about most things, but I don't like to tell her when I'm insecure about stuff, because again, I feel like that's not what I'm supposed to be, and that then makes her uncomfortable and insecure, and I don't want her to be that way. I want her to feel like, you know, safe and fine and everything. So stuff like that can be difficult sometimes, you know. Yeah, so it's changed a lot anyway. I mean, you know, societal norms, as I already mentioned, that's why people aren't like that anymore. for the most part. You know, it doesn't make sense to be, and realistically, like, if you're just a really rich guy, you're more likely to get girls than if you're someone who goes around punching people all the time, depending on, you know, the circles you frequent. So things have changed, but we still value it. We still value, like, violence, especially as it relates to, like, honor and pride, which I don't think we should value that kind of violence. Like, I understand it, I get it. I don't think it, I'm not, like, really casting judgment on people who sort of fall victim to the temptation of it, but it shouldn't be admired in the way that it is. I was thinking even in films, like even like rom-coms and stuff, and sort of like family movies, like punching someone in the face. I always remember that was always seen as like, yeah, you know, yeah, he punched that guy in the face because he's a dick. You shouldn't punch someone in the face because they're a dick. You know, like, anyone you know who's got their head screwed on and who's a sensible adult will tell you, don't even think about punching that person in the face just because they're a dick. That's mad. Even in Bridget Jones's Diary, Colin Firth's character punches Hugh Grant in the face, and it's like, yeah, and like, I'm not trying to be, you know, an old lady about it or whatever, but the fact that it's in Bridget Jones's Diary of all films, and it's Colin Firth doing it to Hugh Grant, I think sort of tells you that it's like how it's kind of valued, and it probably shouldn't be in you know, polite society. And I would kind of consider movies like Bridget Jones's Diary to be a part of polite society. It's not supposed to be a shocking or edgy or violent or provocative or action-packed film. It's fucking Bridget Jones's Diary, you know. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's heavily normalised, but I think probably to avoid these people ending up, you know, with CTEs, or their fucking family having to come and fucking identify their body or whatever, or, you know, their loved ones never seeing them again, or people going to prison because of something they did when they were, like, drunk and stupid or whatever. I think rather than just not super actively encouraging and condoning it, I think really we should go the other way, and it should be, and I've seen it in some circles, it's seen as a point of something worthy of respect to back out of a fight, because in some ways it takes more self-control and sort of, maybe bravery is the wrong word, but it takes more presence of mind and self-control, and sometimes, you know, bravery or whatever, to back out of a situation like that and to be like, this is stupid. And there's, it depending, you know, if you look at sort of self-improvement content online and stuff, and there's a lot of people who are into learning how to fight, to defend themselves, but there's a common thread amongst people who actually can fight most of the time, is that, like, you should just run away, basically. If you can do so without, like, deserting anybody or whatever, and you're on your own, just fucking run away. And I've noticed people are starting to sort of take pride in that idea, because it was at one point, and still is to many people, a sort of shameful notion, and it shouldn't be. It should be really, like, if you're using your better judgment to avoid a potentially destructive situation that has no possible benefit apart from satisfying your sort of weird emotional needs, then that's commendable to do that, and you should be commended for it. I don't really see women sort of commending men for that a lot. I see some men's partners get annoyed when they get into fights. They get annoyed when they nearly get into fights, but I don't think they understand how it feels. I don't think they understand how it... I think women a lot of the time don't understand how insecure men are, because we don't want them to think that we're insecure. And of course they can see that we're insecure, you know, in many ways. Men trying to impress them and, like, you know, all the shit men do, like, that's visibly insecure. Of course they can see that, but I think women typically don't realise how insecure, like, even their partners and stuff are. Because, you know, if they're insecure about something, generally, in my experience and opinion, they're more comfortable telling you. Women are more comfortable telling you that they're insecure about a certain thing. Most of the time, not always. Fucking hell. Weird insect just landed on me. I don't know what the fuck that was. It was huge. Baby! That insect was huge, dog. Tim Westwood. My Tim Westwood impression doesn't feel so appropriate anymore after all the allegations about him. Those tits are huge, dog. Baby! Wheezy! Those tits are huge, man! Luna, come here. Luna! Get over here. What are you doing? Running off into the street by yourself. Wheezy! Those tits are huge, dog. Lil Wayne's got fake tits. Westwood's really excited about it. Wheezy, baby, show us those fake tees. Whoa, those tits are huge, dog. I'm here with my main man, Jay-Z. We're looking at Wheezy's huge tits. Yeah. So yeah, that's all really. I think it's something, well, I guess both genders should be mindful of. But I think men who are that way inclined, as in, you know, inclined to sort of want to be sensible, are more understanding of each other, and it sort of, hang on, sorry, I'm trying to put Luna's lead on, can kind of innately understand one another in that regard. Whereas women, whilst typically agreeing it's good, it's not good to fight, it's good to avoid these situations, they might not understand the emotional weight of it. In fact, as I've said, there's situations like this that I still think about years after they've happened, of people I haven't seen since, and I'm like, man, I fucking wish I'd fucking hit that guy. Like, I just wish I wiped the smile off his face. I wish I'd done this, and I don't. But there was one guy I used to fantasize about seeing it, because after me and Tara broke up, I became like, me and my girlfriend, we broke up for a year or so, and I became very hostile and confrontational and like shoulder barging people in the street and stuff. And this one guy who had like sort of terrorized us before and threatened me, and we were trying to get out of this house share. It was during lockdown. It was one of the worst times of my life. It was during lockdown, and we were stuck in a house share with the nastiest people. And this guy, over nothing basically, challenged me. He was like, come on man, like shoving me and shit, and being like, you know, putting his fists up and shit. And I was like, no, because we had already booked a new apartment secretly. We did, because they were so bad. We were worried about what they were going to do. They were such nasty people, so we secretly had arranged a new apartment to go to, and we would just wait. Every day was like, just get out of the apartment, don't worry about what they're doing, just get out, get the fuck away from these people, move into a new place and try and enjoy the rest of the pandemic, which we kind of did. Probably took a few too many drugs, did a number on my brain with Phenibut. But anyway, after me and Tara broke up, I was like really wanting to fight people, and a few times I almost did, and I used to, and no one, you know, when no one had done anything wrong really, and because I wasn't really tethered, you know, I'm here without my family, and then when me and Tara broke up, before I had the dog, I was like, I don't care about anything, you know, like, I'm not successful, I have no family, I have no friends, I have no girlfriend, my life is humiliation, I'll fucking hurt someone. And which speaks to, you know, why people do it, because they don't really care about their lives, and often it's just that they're not happy. When you are happy, you don't want to throw it away. And I used to fantasize. I was like, man, I swear to God, if I see this guy, if I see him sitting outside in a cafe or something, like, and I never did, and I don't know what would have happened if I did, but I think I would have had that there's a feeling sometimes that rises up in you. It's like this red thing, and it's just like, it's like horniness, the way it can, it's like a puppet. You're a puppet, and the puppeteer is shoving his hand up your ass, and it's like suddenly you're not in control anymore. You know, it's just like these just intense, overpowering sort of emotions, and I think it doesn't always lead to what it wants to lead you to, but it often just, it leads to something. I don't know. And I think that might have overtaken me if I saw the guy, because I fucking hated him so much. And absent of the sort of need to, you know, get me and Tara out of the building we were in and get to our new apartment and stuff like that, at that time I felt I had very little reason not to do something to him. He's a horrible, horrible, horrible prick. And even now, if I saw him now, I wouldn't do anything, but it would really bother me to not do so. It would hurt emotionally, and it would make me feel small, and it would make me second guess myself, and it would make me feel weak. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it just that's it really. Yeah, just my thoughts on the subject. I'll probably do another video at some point about male insecurity in general, because I think it's a thing that doesn't really, it gets a lot of these kinds of issues, I think, get very sort of superficial sort of lip service by people, and they don't really talk about them in a meaningful way, and it's like, you know, men's mental health and men are this and that, but like no one really actually talks about things in a way that seems meaningful or relatable to me. I want to do a video about that in future, but anyway, yeah, cool. That's all. Thanks for watching. If you did, guys, cheers.